My name is Adrienne Nelson, Associate Justice of the Oregon Supreme Court. It is the court's goal in every jury trial to find jurors who will decide the case before them without prejudice or bias, because under the Constitution, everyone deserves a fair trial. Today, I'd like to talk to you about unconscious bias and how to keep unconscious bias out of the courtroom. We are all familiar with conscious bias and have seen how overt bias can lead to intentional and harmful discrimination. Unconscious bias is different, and there are two important things to know about unconscious bias. First, everyone has unconscious bias. And second, because this type of bias happens on an unconscious level, it can impact our thinking and decision-making without us knowing. For these reasons, it's important to be aware of unconscious bias when you are serving on a jury. In this video, we will explain how unconscious bias works and give you tools to help safeguard against unconscious bias in the jury room.
To understand unconscious bias, we need to learn a little bit about how our brains work. Our brains learn through association. They make quick, unconscious, and automatic associations in response to the world around us. I'm sure that when you walked into this room to sit down on your chair, you didn't spend a second thinking about that object you were going to sit on, because your brain has learned what a chair looks like and what you are to do with the chair. Our brains do that about everything, including people. What our brains have learned is that certain people are associated with certain things. Even people with deeply held conscious belief that all people should be treated fairly still have unconscious bias. Sometimes our unconscious associations even conflict with our conscious belief about fairness. If and when we stop to consciously think about it, we might decide our initial hasty judgment doesn't actually fit with the information we're being presented with and what we really know to be fair. It's important as jurors to be aware that unconscious bias exists. Everyone has unconscious biases. So in this video, we will explore what you can do to address the effects of unconscious bias while serving on a jury, so that you can be sure you are making objective decisions and treating everyone fairly.
Let's run through a few quick examples of unconscious bias to experience it firsthand. Remember, we're looking for instantaneous and instinctive decision-making that is influenced by deep-seated stereotypes and attitudes in our brains. When this video started, we all saw Justice Nelson. Truth is, each of us made instantaneous decisions or prejudgments about what type of person she is, even though we don't know her or have any additional information about her. Perhaps you instinctively felt that she was smart, impartial, open-minded, or in charge, or may have concluded that she was tough, intimidating, or out of place. The fact is, we cannot process all the information we receive, so without knowing it, our minds create mental shortcuts and use our past experiences to help us make quick and efficient decisions. Here's another example. Take a look at this list of colors. Try to name the colors as quickly as possible while ignoring the words. Now, do the same with this list. Name the colors, not the words. Well, it may take a little longer to identify the colors in the second list because we aren't relying on the shortcut of the word matching the color. Taking the extra time to take in and process more information is worth it because more data helps us make more accurate decisions. Considering all the information instead of making a decision based on the information that comes to mind most quickly can help us to avoid relying only on our preconceptions.
The shortcuts our minds rely on can be really helpful in our day-to-day lives because they allow us to make good and efficient decisions based on past experience. But quick decisions and efficiency may come at a price. At times, getting things right requires time and careful deliberation. Some of the shortcuts that we use can have really negative consequences, causing us to unknowingly make unfair distinctions among individuals when everyone should be judged fairly. For example, although many people in the United States believe it's wrong to judge people by stereotypes based on things like age, race, or gender, studies have shown that we often react unconsciously to these differences to make decisions in our day-to-day lives. Here are a couple of examples. For a long time, orchestras were largely male, with almost no female musicians selected during auditions. Many orchestras changed the audition structure so that a screen concealed the identity and gender of the auditioning musician from the selection committee. This change drastically increased the number of female players in classical ensembles and demonstrated that there may have been an unconscious gender bias at work. Here is another example. When subjects of a study were presented with images of people who were able-bodied and people in a wheelchair or with a seeing eye dog in the workplace, researchers found that the subjects of the study made assumptions that the workers who were able-bodied were more productive at work. Understanding that you can be influenced by unconscious bias is an important first step in preventing it from tainting your decision-making during a trial.
When you are aware, individually and as a group, about the existence of unconscious bias, you can evaluate when and whether it is impacting your decision-making. You can also remember that unconscious bias acts as a sort of blinder. If you make decisions based on unconscious bias, you are unaware or blind to the stereotypes and attitudes that are actually guiding your decisions. Awareness helps us get rid of the blinders. When you are aware that pretty much everyone has unconscious biased stereotypes and attitudes based on things like age, race, and gender, you can look for those biases and have a better chance of preventing unconscious bias from affecting your decisions and judgments as a juror. In fact, jurors have told researchers that once they were made aware of unconscious bias, they were able to check in with themselves during the trial and evaluate their decision-making process. Would they come to the same conclusion if the person on trial or the witness were someone of a different race, religion, disability, gender, or age? This kind of conscious evaluation of our decision-making can help us avoid mistakes based on unconscious bias. Only after evaluation did the jurors feel confident they were judging the person on trial, the witness, or the lawyer fairly.
Most of us don't want to judge others unfairly or be guided by unconscious bias when making decisions. But research tells us that simply having good intentions does not work. Neither does ignoring things like age, race, or gender, because unconscious bias really does happen without us realizing it. What studies have shown does work is the following. First, know that unconscious bias exists and occurs for all of us. Second, carefully examine our decisions and judgments as jurors. And third, question our decisions by asking whether they would be different if the witness, lawyer, or person on trial was of a different race, age, or gender. We can help prevent unconscious bias from affecting our judgments by taking the time to examine what's influencing our decisions. Making the effort can help us feel more confident that we're being careful and reaching appropriate conclusions. So don't hesitate to ask yourself about unconscious bias. At the end of the trial, during your deliberation, if you think unconscious bias has shaped your evaluation, I encourage you to think about the evidence again with this video in mind and to discuss it with your fellow jurors.
The fact is, honest, intelligent, really good people are impacted by unconscious biases every day. The more aware of it we are, the better. Remember, awareness that each of us have unconscious biases can actually help all of us become more conscious about the fairness of the decisions we make. So remember, research shows that there are 3 things that help prevent unconscious bias from impacting our decision making. Thank you for taking the time to consider this issue. You are about to become part of the most important tradition in our justice system, the right to a trial by jury. Thank you for your service and your effort to ensure everyone receives a fair trial.
Be aware to be fair.
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 Be aware to be fair.